She is an award-winning artist, filmmaker, and writer. She was Guggenheim Fellow and one of Time's 100 most influential people. Her art is in permanent collections in the Met, the Museum of Modern Art, the Tate, the Whitney, and her upcoming book, Marsha, The Joy and Defiance of Marsha P. Johnson, is out now, I believe, or in just a few days, out from Penguin Random House. Very exciting, and is the first definitive biography of the revolutionary Black trans activist. Please welcome Tourmaline.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. You're hilarious. I've known that for literally 20 years.
Tourmaline, I
We've
was
got,
watching some of your, some profiles of you, and they're just so beautiful because we did know each other in our Brooklyn days, in the
yeah,
activist scene,
yeah,
early 2000s, fighting against everything from, well, now like neoliberal capitalism
yeah,
to the prison industrial complex to
yeah.
the wars. And you've been able to do so much in this time. And I'm so happy for you, especially as an artist and someone is like, since we last
Yeah,
hung,
yeah,
I've done more stand up and trying to find my joy in my art, and
yep.
same with you in filmmaking and photography and performance and everything. And so I'm just it's so dope to be reconnected.
Same. Yeah, just watching your ongoing unfolding in the way that you are using humor, kind of like similar to Marsha, to make very insightful and necessary, urgent points about how like another form of politics is possible, right? Is really moving. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on. I mean, I was mentioning earlier in the show that just today, I believe the US military took down a page about Jackie Robinson.
Hmm.
I think they restored it because there was clearly pressure. It's like, all right, Jackie Robinson, what are we doing here?
What are we doing here?
But I mean, this is what we're doing here, right? Like, we are
Yeah.
in a moment now, 60 days into this administration, where some of these executive orders have come down to eliminate all mention
Hmm.
of really Black history, queer
Hmm.
history. So the words transgender,
Hmm.
obviously the actual words DEIA. And it is kind of watching this erasure happen in real time. And that is just obviously in addition to the anti-trans legislation that's coming down, the amount of violence, and this real attempt. It's like, this is not a culture war. This is just a war. Um, and you now have this book on Marsha P. Washington coming out that I think is so timely and critical. And I am really excited to learn more about Marsha. But one of the things is that I know the National Park Service
Hmm.
erased the word transgender from their websites, specifically in relationship to Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P.
Hmm.
Washington, who were at the Stonewall riots. Maybe just explain,
Yeah.
what were the Stonewall riots and who are these
Yeah.
people? Who is Marsha and who's Sylvia?
So, just to contextualize it, what we're seeing is actually a pretty old, dry, dusted playbook that, Marsha P. Johnson, who was a Black trans woman born in Elizabeth, New Jersey in the 40s, came up living. So, President Eisenhower passed an executive order in 1953, 10450, which barred LGBTQIA plus people from employment in the federal government. Like, these are really old, tired playbooks of
Mm-hmm.
erasing, people who are queer, transgender, nonconforming from public life in the U.S. And so Marsha P. Johnson was born into that context, and that era before the Stonewall Uprising was filled with the Lavender Scare, the repression, and deeply regressive policies towards queer and trans people. And what happened was in New York State, there was the 3 Articles law where you could be arrested and put in jail if you were assigned male and you weren't wearing 3 articles of male clothing. So the NYPD could stop you and literally arrest you. And that was only taken off the books in the year 2020, right? So these laws have shaped our history and our now moment in time. But like always happens, you push a community so far, there's going to be a huge revolt. There's going to be an uprising. And that's what happened in June 28th, 1969, when a community in New York City, in the West Village, was actually just incredibly tired of being erased from public life, of being arrested for just wearing clothes that, felt congruent with who they understood themselves to be, and they fought back against the police. And Marsha P. Johnson was one of the first
Oh my gosh,
to
that's
do that.
beautiful.
So yeah,
And sorry, I think I said P. Washington like an idiot a couple times, but so Marsha, I want you to, for her life, I want you to be
yeah,
more like tell me about what it was like, because I do
yeah,
think that what you just said, being arrested on some 3 articles of clothing law
yeah,
that was
exactly.
only, I mean, you can only imagine if like MAGA got in touch, like remember or saw that law, they'd have probably reified it, because
Yes,
that's what they're
yeah,
doing now. They're like, oh, there's this old ass law where, like the Alien Enemies Act, for example, that you're
exactly.
like, I think after interning like,
Yes,
hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans, we should have probably eliminated that from the books. But okay,
that's exactly right.
right? And so, but really that is kind of about what the MAGA movement would like is the enforcement of gender.
Yes.
The enforcement of the performance of gender. And just so like tell me about, yeah, what else things were like for Marsha and how
Yeah.
she survived in this scenario.
Yeah. So Marsha was born, she was a Jersey girl. So she was born in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and came to New York in the early 60s and landed in Times Square. That was the stroll. That was the place that if you were a trans person, a street queen, a drag queen, you went to meet other people who were like you. And it was beautiful. They were hustling, they were doing sex work to survive, and they were also being constantly and consistently arrested by the New York Police Department. And
Mm.
so that was just a daily reality. And one of the things that was so powerful about learning about Marsha over the past 20 years is she took those moments and she used them as a springboard to dream beyond, to freedom dream in the kind of Robin D.G. Kelly-esque version of it about what is and what could be. And
Yeah.
so then she started rebelling, right? She started personal rebelling, saying, actually, I'm going to wear these looks. And she would get continuously arrested by the New York Police Department. Ultimately, in 1969, she led a huge rebellion against the repressive laws at Stonewall. And then she started an organization called STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, which was the first organization in the US to be providing housing for low income, poor street queens, trans people, and also provide political education that, really helped clarify that their struggle was
Mhm.
alongside the struggle of the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords, and they worked together. There's photos of Marsha in front of the Women's House of Detention Center protesting the arrest of Angela Davis and members of the Black Panther Party. And so Marsha was, you know, people love to say that like Marsha threw the first brick at Stonewall, but she was throwing those bricks every day of her life at, homelessness, at police violence, at systemic inequality.
Because she lived in the intersection of so much of that. And I think, this is like, years before we really talk about intersectionality or even just like, I think people really need to understand the ways that the police have always been used and like the state has always been used to, again, we talk about, protecting private property, but also, yes,
Yeah,
doing these things like enforcing your literal your own identity,
yeah,
which I think often like white people, straight people, cis people don't understand that because it's like, well,
right,
no, because you're supposedly the
right,
dominant identity.
yeah,
You don't know what it's like to have your identity be politicized in this way. Um, and then for her, there wasn't really like, tell me about like her activism.
yeah.
Was she driven to that just because it was like, this is what my community needs to survive? Because she didn't have to play this role.
No, she didn't have to play this role. She really felt called to this role. She was a person that was noticing the huge levels of violence going on against her community, and she just wasn't going to take it. So just like she fought back at Stonewall, or just like before Stonewall, when she had a few dollars, she would rent these hotels and get as many trans and gender nonconforming people in a room as possible to sleep, to have rest, to have fun, and to freedom dream. She, after, was organizing around issues of housing and healthcare, right? She made a demand for healthcare, gender affirming care way back in the 70s, right? And she was organizing students at New York University. She led a sit-in and occupation of NYU in September 1970 to
Hell
really
yeah.
help break down the binary between a university and its surrounding community, right? So, I think if she was in her physical body right now, she would be so thrilled about the student movements that are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also, especially some of the movements that are leading, I think outside of NYU,
Mm-hmm.
was it NYU Langham, you're protesting to make sure that, these are blue states, these are
Yeah,
blue cities, that the gender affirming care is continued to be offered and to anyone.
yeah,
Because some of these hospitals and these medical centers are responding to, as if this executive order means anything, as if they're like, oh,
exactly.
I
The
took.
obeying in advance is just so, it's just so outrageous. And I think, you bring up every time you talk, like the importance of dispelling these myths around gender affirming care, right? It's actually, so I was part of the Sylvia Rivera Law Project. And as an organizer, we were working for New York State to repeal its ban for Medicaid recipients for gender affirming care. And we
Yes.
had to really explain to our community that gender affirming care is actually the same care that cis non-trans people receive every day. It's not cosmetic, it's not ineffective. We know that as a community, when you receive healthcare that you need, your mental health goes up and your suicidality goes down. Like the fact that care for young people and older people who are trans and gender nonconforming is being threatened, is in a place of precarity, is so outrageous. And
Yeah,
it's
and it's
also
gonna.
something that Marsha fought against.
Yeah, that's massive. I mean, what?
Yeah.
And you guys were able to. I mean, in
Yeah.
Sylvia Rivera
What
Law Project was able to get gender
we
affirming
did.
care covered.
Exactly. So there was a class action lawsuit, and then we led a lot of, we had to like push Cuomo and his health secretary, but ultimately we were successful, which was really powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, I did just want to put this statue up because I think this is why we have seen the erasure of Marsha P. Johnson from the
Hmm.
National Park Service website is because of this monument. This is a
Yeah.
statue of her. This is a bust
Yeah.
of her.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about this? And also,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, Jay Paletto is an incredible sculptor and made this monument. And what is wild is in the 80s, the two kind of white figure statues went up that are in Sheridan Square Park in honor of kind of like the Stonewall Rebellion. But that really didn't reflect who was at the vanguard, who was at the forefront of that uprising. So this statue is such a powerful reminder of Marsha and the Black and brown people who were living in this park, right? Because they were kicked out of their homes. They were facing homophobia and transphobia in their homes. So they went to this park and they created life together, the
mm,
Sheridan Square kids, right? And they were fundamentally a huge part of the uprising that happened at Stonewall. So it was the queer, trans, gender nonconforming, houseless young people in this park. And then it was bar goers like Marsha and Zazu Nova, who were in the bar, who were in Storm A, who were fighting back. And so what we're seeing here is like the erasure of why we have Pride Month, which
yeah.
is just really outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually curious about. First of all, this is beautiful, and I need to see it in
Yeah.
person and just explain like where it is and what the significance of like Christopher Street is, and maybe like
Hmm.
what Sylvia Rivera Law Project, obviously, and
Yeah.
I guess sort of like the lasting legacies of people like Sylvia and Marsha.
Yeah, so that statue, that bust is in right in front of Stonewall Inn in Sheridan Square Park on Christopher Street, which is such a historic place for LGBTQIA plus people, right? Queer, transgender, nonconforming people. It's where the Stonewall Rebellion happened. It was where such incredible policing against our community happened with those 3 article laws that we talked about.
Yeah.
And so that monument is really a place where, if you, in the time of the 60s and 70s, if you weren't going to Times Square, you were going to Sheridan Square Park. And so that is the context. It's really in the hub of a community that our lineage, that our foreparents like Sylvia Rivera, who was from the Bronx and hit Times Square because of homophobia and transphobia in her household at a little over 11. Right? These are
Mhm.
actually young people, 11 years old. She met Marsha at 13. That's when she was hustling, like doing sex work,
Wow. Yeah.
because of levels of misunderstanding and homophobia and transphobia in the household. So to
What is your?
me, yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
No, no, no. What were we gonna say?
I mean, I was just wondering, like, in terms of, um, first of all, it's just so fun. I don't know why my phone went off. It's just so fun to be talking to you, and I'm just like, because we used to like sit around and just like talk
Yes.
politics
Yeah.
at in our apartment, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, so it just like, it's bringing me back, and I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. And so, um, I mean, what are your thoughts now on, what happens to young trans kids like,
Right.
Marsha,
Mm-hmm.
and Sylvia and all
Mm-hmm.
the up and coming, future activists and current ones?
Yeah.
I mean, what is your, because I think there are a lot of people, young people who are trans, who are scared, who are parents of trans kids who are scared.
Yeah.
Maybe they live in states, obviously, that are, where these laws are coming into, are being enacted. Like, I don't know if you can situate this in the sort
Yeah.
of broad, like the moment we're living through in the broad timeline of like queer liberation, trans
Yeah.
rights, civil rights, really.
Yeah. To me, it has profound echoes of what we were talking about with Eisenhower's executive orders of erasing queer and trans people from public life, right? That era before Stonewall, deeply repressive, deeply regressive. Amara Jones and you were talking on MSNBC about,
Right.
like that the Jim Crow era, the kind of the worst of the American history. And I fully agree with everything that she was saying. I think it's so important. That's partly why I wrote 2 books about Marsha. One is a children's book, and the other is the biography, and they both come out May 20th. The children's book is really about how important it is to locate other people who want to support who you are, that uneditedness of like being a gender expressive young person or being a caregiver for a gender expressive child. And in this moment of increased harsh conditions, to me, that message needs to be loud. We need to have our leaders proclaiming it. We need to, like, you were talking about Schumer. Like, I remember seeing Schumer at Pride in 2021 with the bullhorn kind of like marching along. We need to
God,
have
yeah.
actually people affirming like the importance of gender affirming care, the importance of showing up for our young people like Sylvia Rivera, who was 11 when she hit Times Square. And also know that, like, Marsha wrote the blueprint. The blueprint is our basic needs. It's healthcare, it's housing, it's freedom from police violence, freedom to be in public life, not arrested for not wearing 3 articles laws, 3 articles of like male clothing. That's where these orders want to take us back, and
Yeah.
that's why it's so important to have leadership around it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious, like, I think we're all sort of thinking about Pride this year and what
Yeah,
it's gonna look like and how it's
yeah,
gonna be, I mean, if anything, right, it will definitely show who the real radicals are and who, like, really
yes,
wants to, like, remember,
yeah,
why Pride exists in the first place,
yeah,
and who are the, people, i.e., like, the targets and the corporate
yeah,
sponsors who are like, "We're
yeah,
gonna get rid of the DEI slash whatever the hell," we're not gonna be
yeah,
it's not gonna be brought to you by The Gap anymore,
right,
that kind of thing.
exactly.
Which could be a good thing on a
Mm-hmm.
purely, sort of a pink washing,
Mm-hmm.
level. But at the same time, I think what you just said is something I keep on saying, which is like, we cannot run from trans issues. We must
Yep.
run towards them. We must
Yes.
lift people up, talk about it,
Yeah.
normalize it. And
Yeah.
it's like, you don't have to, and this is sort of my big thing is like, you don't have to give trans issues. There's a million things happening right now, but we don't have to give it like an outsized response. But like,
Totally.
when we're living in a time where this fascist regime is in an outsized way
Yeah.
focusing on trans people, you think we could a little bit, like, at
Exactly.
least meet them a little bit where
Yeah.
they're at in terms of this amount of hate, and then say this is actually about a lot of other issues. Like, it
Exactly.
starts with trans people and then it keeps on going. And I think the other thing that it seems like Marsha was fighting for, and Sylvia Rivera and everyone, like, this idea of the humanness of trans people.
Right.
And so many regressive reactionary Republicans are like, they want trans people to be not be able to be employed because of their gender identity, so
Yep.
that they have to seek, sex work, right? And again,
Yep.
not in a way to demonize sex work, or not to
Right.
say that we shouldn't be fighting to make it safe and all the
Right.
things are legal, but like, this is about putting people back into the shadows the same
Yes.
way that it's about, I mean, they're gonna come for same-sex marriage. They've already
Yes.
come for abortion rights. Everything is about, it's fine only if you're in a back alley and you're largely the victim of crime, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. I think you said it so well. Like, we are in the first line of the poem, First They Came For, right? Like, this is so clearly not stopping at trans people. You talked about divorce, like, I think it
That's right.
really is very clear that this is a trial balloon. I think, to me, I find this moment to have a real glimmer of hope because Marsha lived through something so similar. And there was a huge uprising around it, right? And not to say that harsh conditions always cause people to, step up in such a powerful way. But just like in 2020, when 20,000 people gathered at the Brooklyn Museum in New York City to demand that Black trans lives are sacred, or just like in 1969, after an Eisenhower era, after three articles of closed laws, New York City had a moral code that the NYPD was enforcing, right? A moral code about like who is an acceptable person in society, which is so clear. That ideology underpins all of these executive orders in order to really firmly erase our community from public life, just like you were saying. But to me, Marsha laid a blueprint. The blueprint is coming together in the midst of a mess of a thing and having firm leadership that, unlike Gavin Newsom, bending the knee and saying, actually, I agree with you, we're going to say, no, actually, this very small community deserves to be protected and respected and have access to healthcare, housing, and jobs.
Yes, yes. And that no one should be prevented from any aspect of life. Like,
That's
that
right.
is, I fundamentally and morally, politically, constitutionally disagree that anyone should be barred from any aspect of life. That's just
That's
period.
right.
And if I
Yeah.
believe that, well, then I have to support people in all, in all walks of life.
Yeah.
And is it the main governor? We need more of the, I'll see you in court energy,
Right.
and
Exactly.
less of the, I see your point energy.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Or that's incredible. Trans people engaging in life, that's incredibly unfair, which is what Gavin
Yeah,
Newsom
it's
said,
about fairness. I wanted to just
Yeah.
throw up, I mean, there is nothing more sort of beautiful than this book cover.
Oh, thank you.
It obviously, you are an artist, and this needs to be read.
Yeah.
So it comes out tomorrow, and then the children's book. What is the children's book called?
So both One Day in June, which is the children's book, and Marsha,
One Day in
uh,
June. Here
The
we go.
Joy and Defiance, they both come out in May 2020. Um, and so you can pre-order today, you can pre-order tomorrow. That has a real big effect on the life of the book. But yeah,
Wait, did you say May? Am I super
yeah,
off by
May.
2 months? Damn
Yeah,
it.
it's okay.
I'm really excited. And are you gonna be going on tour? Can
Yeah, I'll be
people?
going on tour. I'll be going throughout the U.S. This is a pretty challenging time to leave the U.S. and laws, the executive orders around passports for trans people. But to me, it's really important that we are sharing Marsha's message. She performed in London. She couldn't get a passport for a very long time, so she had friends come with her to the passport agency, and then she was harassed coming back from London to by Border Patrol. And so to me, it's like these are not new issues at all, but she had a blueprint of real vision and real dedicated activism about how to change them.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuationroom. Do